Today we're making baked apples. No fancy intro, no introductory statement about when the apple was invented, just baked apples. We'll be making these bad boys at 3 different levels so that you can choose your own adventure here. Level 1 will be the basic store-bought edition of the baked apple. This is for those who don't have as much time and just want to get some kind of heated apple inside of them as soon as possible. We respect that around here. Level 2 will involve a little more refinement, a little more class. We're talking garnishes, baby. Homemade whipped cream and/or custard that will both take your apple up a notch. And finally, level 3 is what you want to present to others, or hell, yourself if you feel like you deserve it. This is where we're going to be pulling out all of the stops and bringing the ruckus to this absolute fruit. We're transforming this apple into a certified pie. But let's bring it back down to level 1 first. First off, apple choice. The choice of your apple matters a lot to some people. Apple elitists are everywhere, hiding in our midst. There's even an entire ranking site for it. But we're gonna try not to be judgmental here unless you're using a Red Delicious. For us, we tend to buy apples that bake very well for recipes like this, such as Granny Smith, Jonah Gold, Honeycrisp, or Pink Lady. We usually stick to Honeycrisps, but we had Pink Ladies this time. If you do only have Gala or Red Delicious, then I guess they'll work because they'll still be apples loaded with sugar by the end of this. Let's get started with the filling. You can fill these fellers with whatever you like, but we stick to the big 3. Something crunchy, something fruity, and something wet. Crunchy ingredients will be stuff like nuts, grains, and cereal. Fruity ingredients can be another fresh fruit, something dried or candied. And wet ingredients will be a sauce, jelly, or jam. If you're not feeling any of these, that's alright. They're your apples, do what you want to do with them. Today we're using cashews for our crunchy, dates for our fruity, and persimmon-orange jam for our wet ingredients. We'll have a recipe for that last one later in the video. The possibilities for your filling are endless though. You can get pistachios or oats involved. You can get some freeze-dried raspberries or fresh blueberries in there. Hell, you can open a jar of Smuckers or get some good old-fashioned brown sugar in that bad boy. Tailor this stuff to your taste buds since you're the one that's going to be eating it, I think. Regardless, chop your choice of crunchy into small chunks if needed and throw them into a bowl. For 4 apples, we would use 25 grams of dates, 25 grams of cashews, and 1 tablespoon of jam total. Then we mix our big 3 together and add a sprinkle of nutmeg, cardamom, cinnamon, and clove for that extra Christmas spice zing. It's holing time. You can say that one to your wife. I know cutting a hole into an apple sounds like it's no problem, and it can be. We use this tool to core the apple out, which makes it pretty simple. But if you are using a knife, please be careful. Both of us have scars on our fingers due to fruit cutting mismanagement, and I'm not even lying about that. Once you've somehow created a hole in your apples, place them in an oven-safe dish and preheat your oven to 190 degrees Celsius or 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Now here's the complex part. You're gonna put the filling in the apples. Just push it in there. And right when you think it's been filled, jam it down even more and force feed it more stuffing. Feel free to verbally degrade it a little, just don't spit on it. When you're done, place a flake of butter on top of your apples and in the oven they go for 25 minutes. Your end result of your level 1 baked apple is a nice little stuffed friend that's quick and simple to make, and tastes good unless you went with the glass, fruity pebbles, and water combo. Let's talk level 2. I know it sounds like it's going to be a lot more complex, but really level 2 is just an enhanced level 1. Basically, you take your level 1 apple and bring in the garnishes. The really easy stuff would be your ice creams, your store-bought whipped cream, chocolate sauces, hot cherries or raspberries, whatever you want. Just get it on and around the apple and you've already stepped your game up. If you want to go the extra mile, you can take some heavy whipping cream and do what it was built to do. Whip the shit out of it. If you have a hand mixer or an equivalent, just attack the whipping cream on the highest setting for about 30 seconds. Then you can throw in a tablespoon of sugar, maybe a little vanilla or vanilla bean, and then whip it some more. You can actually really infuse this stuff with any flavoring you want or have though. Almond extract, cinnamon, coconut flakes, whatever you want to do. If you don't want your whipped cream or ice cream to melt, then add it to the apple once it's cooled down. But the trade-off there is that you'll have a lukewarm apple instead of a warm one, so yeah. We're not quite done with level 2 yet though. If you want to go above and beyond the various creams, we suggest adding a custard on top, which we'll explain how to make now. Step 1. Grab an egg and forcibly separate the egg white from the yolk. Step 2. Put the yolk in a bowl and add 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Step 3. Grab some milk and measure out a half liter or 2 liquid cups of it. You can use whatever kind of milk or milk substitute that you want here. We're an oat milk house, so that's what we're running with. Take 2 tablespoons of your milk and add it to your starchy egg mixture, or eggy starch mixture. Stir it all together well. Step 4. Grab a pot and add 2 teaspoons of sugar to it. Don't turn on the stove yet, we're adding the sugar first so that it doesn't sink to the bottom of our milk. From here you'll add some kind of vanilla flavor. You can add extract, real vanilla bean, or just use vanilla-infused sugar instead of normal sugar. We opted for the latter option here. Now take the rest of your milk and dump it on top of the sugar. Then turn on the stove to medium and whisk it frequently. Step 5. Once your milk starts to boil to the top of the pot, whisk it back down and add your egg and starch mixture. Keep on whisking throughout this and boil for another minute. The consistency that you want is ultimately going to be up to you, but we want a runnier custard so that it pours over the apple nicely. To check if your custard has the right consistency for you, isolate a little bit of the custard on a spoon and blow on it like you're trying to get your Nintendo game cartridge to work. If you determine the custard to still be a little too thin, you can add a little bit more starch until it's the consistency that you want it to be. Don't just add starch by itself though. Take a little bit of milk and mix it with the starch beforehand, then add it to the pot while stirring. If you're happy with the consistency, you can add more flavors if you want to. As always, pretty much anything goes, from cinnamon to chocolate chips to rum. When you're done, you can store your custard in the fridge for up to a week or use it right away. If you want to keep the custard from building a skin on the top, use some plastic wrap. Or don't do that and just eat the skin. Hell yeah. When you're ready to use the custard, just heat it up in a pot or in the microwave and stir before pouring it over your apples. You can also use it cold if you prefer that, which is what we did for our apples. And that's it, level 2 complete. Let's bring it home with the level 3 baked apple, the enhanced edition, the game of the year apple. We're going to be making some homemade jam to stuff this produce with and envelop the whole thing in a flaky crust. Let's kick this thing off with our persimmon-orange jam recipe. So as always, if you're not into oranges and persimmons, or just can't get a hold of them, you can always replace everything here with fruits that you do like. You'll also need sugar, and you have a couple of options in that realm, namely regular sugar and pectin sugar. Now, I'm not some kind of fruit scientist with a minor in sugar, but the type of sugar that you'll want to use is going to be dependent on your fruit. Some fruits are low in pectin and naturally need pectin sugar to thicken up into a proper jam. Others are high in pectin and can just be made with ordinary sugar with minimal issue. We've attached a chart in the description of the video from Kilner to help determine what kind of sugar that you'll want to use. But the long and short of it is that the pectin level will affect the thickness of the jam, and usually you want jam to be on the thicker side, though that is ultimately up to your preferences. Alright, so chop your fruits up and combine them with sugar in a pot at a 4:1 ratio. That's 4 parts fruit to 1 part sugar. Now, a lot of store-bought jams are going to have a 1:1 ratio or a 2:1 ratio, which makes them a lot sweeter. And if you want that here, then by all means go for it. But we're putting this stuff inside an apple with other sweet shit in and around it, so consider that. If you want to, you can add something like vanilla, bourbon, rum, cinnamon, or anything like that to the mix to get something really special. I personally like a pear and rum combo. Then we're gonna gently boil this mess for about 20 minutes and puree it together with a hand mixer. You can use the blender if you like, or you can just choose to not mix it up at all if you like it extra chunky. If you are going to blend your jam, turn your brain on for a moment. Is the mixture actively boiling? Would it give you third-degree burns if it splattered? These are questions to ponder. Ponder them now instead of later at the hospital. Once you've blended up your jam to your liking, it's time to transfer it to a jar! My wife wrote the first draft of this script and there was an exclamation point at the end of that sentence, so hopefully that was exciting enough. You're gonna want to wash out your jar with hot water before filling it with scorching hot jam to ensure that the jar won't shatter on you. Jam making is like the bomb defusal of food making. Once you're done filling your jar, close the lid tightly and turn the jar upside down. The heat from the inside of the jar will create a seal on the jam so that you can keep it outside of the fridge as long as it remains unopened. When you're done, let your jam cool for a couple of hours before going at it, and be sure to store it in the fridge once it's opened. Now to truly upgrade your baked apple experience, we're gonna wrap these suckers in something akin to pie crust. This is a great option if you want to make baked apples for a Christmas dinner party or for that guy or girl that you've been meaning to impress. I mean it, baked apples are an absolute crowd pleaser. Just make sure that the person knows that you exist first. Come on, don't be a dork. You'll still want to serve the whole thing with some kind of whipped cream, ice cream, custard, or fruit sauce though to really bring home the bacon. Hell, put some bacon on there if you want to. We'll be serving it with whipped cream and custard as presented earlier in this video. So let's start on our spiced short crust dough. The amount that this will yield will cover about 4 or 5 apples, so adjust accordingly. Or use any leftover dough for tarts or cookies. Or freeze it for later, your call. The recipe is similar to the dough that we made for our Linzer Tort cookies in the last video, but not the same. We'll need 100 grams of flour, 37 grams of brown sugar, a pinch of salt, 100 grams of cold butter cubed straight from the fridge, 1 small egg yolk, and about a teaspoon of cinnamon. Grab a bowl and add the flour, sugar, salt, and cinnamon. Combine them together and add your butter and egg yolk. Mix all of it together in a stand mixer or with your cold-ass hands until the dough starts to stick together and form balls. For more specifics, check the process in our Linzer Tort cookie video. Then wrap the dough ball in plastic wrap and place it in your fridge right next to your zucchinis. Leave your crust in the fridge for at least 30 minutes, and then prepare your apples for filling. This time you want to not only poke a hole, you also want to peel them. We did not peel ours. We forgot. I'm saying we because we're a team. We forgot. It's alright, they were still good. But yeah, peel them if you don't forget. Then fill them with your preferred filling or the one that we presented in the first part of the video. Dust your work surface and roll out your dough. You'll want this to be pretty thin, around 2 to 4 millimeters in thickness. Remember that you can always use plastic wrap to roll out short crust of any kind if it's giving you trouble. Once it's rolled out, wrap your stuffed apples in crust, cover any surfaces where the crust broke, and really tuck it in for a bedtime story. Use a little bit of water and some finger magic to smooth out the crust where different parts of the dough overlap. This is very optional and was only an excuse for me to say finger magic. If you want to, make a quick egg wash and coat the surface of the dough with it. For that, you'll just whisk an egg and add a bit of sugar or milk if you want those involved. If you really want to pull this whole thing together, grab a cinnamon stick, break it into a smaller piece, and then shove it right down the middle so that it sticks out. Like a stem, the stem of an apple. It looks like an apple stem. Isn't that cute? Then place your apples in the oven at 190 degrees Celsius or 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 25 to 30 minutes depending on how dark you like your crust to be. Then decorate your apples with your custard, whipped cream, and maybe some sprinkles of your choice if you want that extra flair. You did it! You may now eat the apples. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this recipe is something that can bring a little happiness to your cold winter day. Unless you're Australian. In which case, good day, mates. Wait for July. If you want to follow our social media, they'll be linked in the description. Have a good one.